Hey guys, thank you so much and welcome to the Game Your Future podcast, all about helping gamers realize their full potential. And today I have a special guest for you guys today. This is Eric Mangold, who is a financial planner who's really just here helping people get from point A to their financial summit. So thank you so much and welcome, Eric. How are you?
Doing great, Daniel. How are you doing?
Doing all right. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about kind of what you do and how you help people, right? As far as this, getting from point A to financial summit. So I guess what does that mean to you?
A lot of things to unpack there. And what a lot of people do is they push off their own kind of financial planning, or maybe they put in money into their 401k at their work or whatever. But that's one piece of the puzzle. And there's a lot of pieces to having a sound financial plan. Because at some point, everybody's going to want to retire. Everybody's going to want, if they've got kids, they want to take care of their kids, help them get to college, maybe donate to charity. A lot of different things, maybe travel around the world, right? And it's if there's no plan in place, then the chances of reaching those goals are a lot lower, right? I mean, a lot with
Yep.
your, I would imagine that falls into your leadership type of speeches, right? Like, if you got to have your goals, how are you going to get to your goals? And if you don't have them
Right.
written down, or you don't have them set, what are the chances you're going to achieve them? And the same is true with your finances. And what I see a lot of people do is either just chip away with like one piece at a time. They piecemeal their financial plan, or they put it on the back burner altogether. And that's obviously not good. And then they have, 20 years pass. Then they realize, hey, you know what? I gotta really take my own future, take charge of this, because otherwise I'm not going to have the kind of retirement I want. I'm not going to be able to do the things that I want.
Yeah, and so one of the things I know in the leadership space, we especially we talk about, starting with the end in mind, right? And then
Yeah.
kind of reverse engineering our way back to it. I think one of the things that, I've seen for finances, and maybe this has happened, even myself too, is doing that, just you shovel money in the 401k and you just don't think about it. Because part of it is like, oh, well, I'll have enough to retire maybe eventually at some point. But as far as like having that end, it's, how do you help people with seeing that, like making it real? Because it's so far away, right? If
Yeah.
especially if you're, young, just starting out, right? If you're like just getting your career, or maybe early career, like, call it 20s, maybe even early 30s, you're like, yeah, but that's still so far off. I don't
Yeah.
want to even think about that. Like, and then of course the way the market moves, right? The value of the money, right, goes up and down based on stocks and whatever you have invested in it. And so it's just this moving target, it feels like. So how do you get people to really understand that, or make it real, I guess, to
That's a
get to
that's a
that level.
great question. And a lot of times I do a lot of 401k plans for different businesses. And when I do the enrollment meetings, telling people why they should enroll the 401k, I tell the folks that are in their 20s and 30s, I said, one of the most important decisions that you can possibly make is to start saving when you're young. And everybody wants to talk about rates of return when they're investing. And right, because it's the exciting thing to talk about. Oh, like, my money doubled, or I got made this much money. But for the people that are young, if they can start saving when they're young, it's going to have a much more dramatic impact at how much their wealth is going to grow than a rate of return. If I can get somebody saving and saving really well and on a consistent basis, and when they're in their mid 20s, I mean, the kind of the world is their oyster. And even with the market volatility, because most people have that, especially if you're young, you have a lot of runway before you retire, so you can handle those ups and downs in the market and not make super emotional decisions to get out when we're watching the news and the world is exploding. So for the younger people, it's really saying start somewhere, start saving somewhere, because not only the habit that you have to save, but the dramatic impact on your ability to build wealth is real. And then for people that are older, that say, maybe if they're in their 40s or 50s and retirement isn't here, but it's around the corner, what I typically do with my clients is we build a retirement projection and say, okay, based upon what you're saving, based upon what you own, and based upon what you owe, and let's say you want to retire at 60 or 65 or whatever scenario they want to play out, this is what retirement could look like if you stay on the same track. So then it makes it real. Like, hey, you know what? We're on the right track. We're feeling pretty good. or maybe there's some course corrections we need to make because we're not on the track we thought we were on. So that projection is usually a very eye-opening exercise to say, hey, take a deep breath. We're looking pretty good. Keep doing what you're doing. Or, hey, we got to tackle some things to make your dream a reality.
Gotcha. And for those that are listening, most of which are gamers, there's this kind of sense too where I guess in a game you have this kind of immediate feedback,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where thing happen, you push button, thing happens on screen, right? And one of the things I think with finances, right, is just the time is again the time horizon. So having that, so making that end goal kind of more real, I think is really helpful. But then do you do additional things along the way, right? Like how do we know we're getting there, or how do we know we're getting off track, and having that kind of constant reinforcement?
Yeah. So like with gaming, especially with games that have chapters or journeys where you're trying to get to some place or levels, right? You're not going to go from level 1 to level 25. And you're not going to do that overnight. It's going to take a little while. And the same type of thing with a financial plan. Retirement might be level 25 and it might be some time away, but that's where you want to be. Just like you want to win the game or reach the end of the game. And having that goal in mind is so critical. And then along the way, it's there are pieces that you can get with immediate feedback. I mean, you can look to see how your investments are performing, but it really, with a financial plan, is not something that you can kind of, using like jet gaming, is fire and forget. You don't want to really fire and forget your financial plan. It's something you definitely need to check in on. Again, using jet kind of terminology, I like to tell people when I work with new clients, I like to tell them, hey, I'm your wingman along this journey. So if something happens that could potentially deviate you from the plan, you get hurt or sick, you lose a job, you taking care of parents, whatever it may be, that I'm the person that's their wingman to say, hey, how does this impact our overall financial plan? Part of being a financial planner is not being there only in the good times. It's really easy to be there in the good times. Stock market's up, everything's going well. Yeah, they're great and fun conversations, but let's talk about like during COVID when the stock market was plummeting. Even at the beginning of this year with all the tariff wars and the stock market was plummeting. A lot of times I'm there and need to be there when the times aren't looking as rosy, to help talk to people and listen about what's going on in the world and what their concerns are. And sometimes it's acting on those concerns. Sometimes it's talking them off the ledge, and sometimes it's simply listening. But I think you just it's almost like having a coach, having that coach along the way to help you stay on the course you want to get, so you can, reach that level that you want to reach.
And I love that analogy too, having whether it's the coach or the wingman to kind of guide you along the way. Because I think one of the challenges that I've noticed as far as the gaming community, right, is that when you're playing a game, it's fun, you're having a great time, and if you mess up, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And if I'll be, you could even reset, reload, go back to a previous save. And even if you can't, even if it's, like an MMO, right? Everything's persistent, everything keeps going. Even if you mess up in that, at the end of the day, who cares, right? You
Yeah.
just try again. But when we get into the real world, suddenly we have real world consequences, right? And so I think part of it, yeah, and I wanted to get kind of your thoughts on this too. Is like, how do you reconcile that if we're talking to gamers to say like, okay, I think there's kind of the two extremes that happen with gamers, where it's either we're super risk takers because it doesn't matter because games we've learned how to take risks, but now you have real world consequences. Or you have the people out on the other side. It's like, oh, now there's real world consequences. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to take any risks. So take risk in the game, not in the real life. So how would you, I guess, help with those kind of people to say like, when it's talking about your future and these real world consequences, like how would you
It's
help?
there's a great analogy there, and I use this many times, and I tell people, when you're on a financial plan, right, when you get to retirement, there is no reset button, there is no do-over button. In a game, if you lose a life, or you go back, you don't achieve a level, and you hit the reset button, okay, not the end of the world, but unfortunately, the way that in America, how the financial planning space is that, or the financial planning journeys are for Americans, is that we're now responsible for our own retirement enjoyment. It's not going to be the government. It's not going to be the company that you work for. I mean, used to be people would, you work for a company for 35, 40 years and you get a pension. And then you'd retire and you get Social Security, your pension, and then, whatever else extra money that you had saved. But now that pyramid, if you will, is really inverted, where the majority of your financial or retirement well-being is going to be based upon how much money you save. And there isn't going to be that reset button to take you back to when you were 25 and say, I just want to save a little bit more, or reset to when I was 35. I wished I had saved a little bit more. No, there is no do-over. So I try. Unfortunately, it is a little bit of tough love sometimes to say, listen, the responsibility is yours. As a coach, I can give you the guidance, but you're the one that's got to pull the trigger and say, instead of putting in 5% in my 401k, I want to put in 7% or 10% because I know 5% is not going to be enough. And if it's not enough, there is no reset.
Yeah, so really having that discussion. And as far as having that tough love, I guess what's been kind of like the biggest, I guess we'll call it a motivator, I guess, to get people to really see that picture to say, oh, I should be saving more.
There's times when if I'm doing a presentation where I'll show somebody, here's somebody that started saving at age 25. And what
Hmm.
does that look like at age 65? And here's somebody that started saving at 35 and 45. And what does that look like? And the person that started saving at 45 will usually have about 25% of what the person who started saving at 25 has. So, like, for example, that person at 25 has $1 million. That person that started saving at 45 will have $250,000. Like, it's so dramatic. And when people see those numbers, they're like, whoa, they're really eye opening. And I don't mean it to use scare tactics. I mean, it's arithmetic, right? Like, I'm showing legitimate savings rates and rates of return and growth over time. But some people are like, no, I'll save a little bit more next year. I'll save a little bit more next year. It's like, if you can do it, try to do it now, because it really does make an impact. And also, when people are saving, maybe they're saving 6% or 7% of their savings, and we bump them up to 8 or 9% in a year, that small incremental change usually isn't going to make them feel a bite in their lifestyle. They're still going to be able to go out to dinner. They're just going to be able to get the new Grand Theft Auto whenever it comes out.
Yep.
They're still going to be able to go out on vacations. But if you slowly increment how much you save, it's much easier. It's much easier to swallow, much easier to absorb from a lifestyle perspective.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that point up because I think there's so many people too that think that you're like, oh, I have to save all this money for retirement. Well, then I don't get to live the way I want. I don't get to have fun. I'm
Yeah,
just saving.
and
I'm
I don't
just
want to see
socking away
that.
money, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see people have fun. I want to see people enjoy their lives too. It's one of the greatest enjoyments that I get out of what I do is hearing people. I literally have clients right now that are in Vietnam. They're on a Asian traveling trip. They're going to Vietnam and Thailand and the Philippines. Like, and they're coming back in late June. I can't wait to hear about that trip. But they're retired, right? And they're
Yeah.
having the time of their lives. And the beginning part of the year, they went up to Alaska, and I was listening to him tell me about the grizzly bears that he saw, and this piece of a
Wow.
glacier that broke off, and in front of them, like it was just amazing stories. I love hearing those success stories. I love hearing the success stories of, hey, you know what, my kid got into college that they wanted. They maybe didn't get the scholarship money they want, but we're going to be okay with helping them so our kids don't have any student loans. Like, those success stories make me feel and realize, hey, what I'm doing is good work. I mean, it's making me feel like $1 million.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's just it's so powerful, I think, too, just to have, that kind of level of motivation, that level. And I like going back to the visuals just to even show, you know, comparison side by side to say, like, yes, this is important and it's powerful
Yeah.
the way you're doing this. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So I guess so going back to some of these gaming analogies, like what as far as like the level of progression, right? We talk gaming progression. How do we get better, more powerful? Um, like what so you mentioned kind of the level system, which yeah, completely agree. Whether it's you're getting to level 25 and now you're financially
Hmm.
retired. I wanted to ask a little bit about like are there I guess specific levels? Like how do we know that we're achieving these kind of levels and moving up, right? It's because at some point it's like a number. And it's like
Yeah.
and maybe it's just a progress bar to be like, all right, this is how I get here. But are there specific milestones along the way, and how do we celebrate those?
Yeah, there's definitely some specific milestones, and also when it goes to like the gaming, if you think about the levels, as you get higher up in the levels, the difficulty and can get more challenging, and sometimes that can be with your own financial plan too, because as you get older, life usually doesn't get less complicated; it usually gets more complicated. Whether it's kids, again, whether it's taking care of sick parents, whether it's realizing that, hey, I want to retire 5 years earlier, whatever it may be, usually life is going to throw you some curveballs. So it's not something to shy away from. It's definitely something you have to address. But as you get older, things tend to get a little bit more challenging. Again, that's so helpful to have like a financial planner or a financial coach to work with you and be that wingman. But there are some specific milestones. I think when you're 35, you want to have about 1 times your salary saved for retirement accounts. When you're 45, you want to have 3 to 5 times that saved. And then, when you're 55, have, 5 to 8 times saved, whatever your salary is. So if you're 35 years old and you make $100,000 a year, you want to have about $100,000 saved for your retirement, not for the vacation fund or the holiday, or, the holidays fund, whatever it may be, that's specifically for your retirement. And that generally are good kind of back of the napkin temperature checks to say, okay, I might be on the right track. But also, I also offer to folks that if you really feel or you don't know if you're on the right track, then talk to a financial professional, talk to somebody and say, listen, I'm concerned about where we are. We want to retire. We might, a lot of people are retiring at 65 and starting a side hustle. So many people, that a lot of clients I have that are retired are starting side hustles. And whether it's consulting in their prior businesses. I have a client who retired who worked in the beverage industry, and he worked in the beverage industry for 35 years. At 65, he retired. But all of his clients came back and said, why'd you retire? You were awesome. So he started his own consulting business at 65, and
Oh,
he consults all his own clients. And he goes, I'm making my own schedule. I'm making plenty of money. I'm making great money. He goes, I couldn't be any happier because he's active. So if people are not sure, or if they're, a little uneasy about where they are, talk to somebody, because that's what people like me are here for.
that's great. And as far as talking, and this might be the same recommendation for my next question, as far as talking, excuse me. Um, One of the things that I know from playing games is that money is complicated in the sense that like there's some games where you need money, like the currency, whatever's in the game, whether it's, sometimes Grand Theft Auto, it is like dollars and money. And even playing like the fantasy games, it's gold or like Zenny or Gil or whatever. And there's different ways to make it. And especially in MMOs where it is like, a big vibrant community and there's lots of player interactions and trade. And you can amass a lot of money, but you don't necessarily do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it kind of like devalues kind of the call it the hustle of trying to get the money, because it's like, all right, I got a whole bunch of money. Or in games it's usually easier to get money, right? And so there's kind of this discouragement, I think, coming outside the game again to say like, oh, it's like it's a real struggle, it's a real fight to earn more, to try to make a living, as opposed to like the game that made it so easy. And so I wanted to get kind of your thoughts as far as like, and how you would help gamers to say like, okay, it's easy to make money in a game versus like, all right, now we're outside of a game. What do I do? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really there's 5 tenets that I work off of when I start working with somebody new. All right, here's the 5 things that we're going to do to start on building your plan. And the first thing is we're going to do is we're going to get organized. Okay, get organized. Know all of the things you own, know what you owe in terms of debts, how money comes in the door, how much money's coming in the door, how much money's going out in expenses. Okay, that's the first thing. The second step is let's protect everything that we have. Okay, so do we have the right home and auto and umbrella insurance? And I don't work with that kind of insurance, but I review it frequently enough to know if it's right and enough.
Okay.
Make sure we have enough life insurance. Are their wills prepared? Things of that nature. That's step two. Step three is we want to work to having saved 10 to 15% of our income, ideally 15%. Okay. If somebody's only saving 4%, I'm not going to jump them up to 15 that next day. That will be dramatic, right? But if they're
Yep.
saving 4%, let's move them to 6. And the next year, move them to 8. So we get that systematic increase of raising how much they're saving. The fourth thing we're going to do is we're going to have 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. That's going to be saved in like a checking, savings, or money market account. That's the emergency fund, the rainy day fund. I had a client call it the chaos fund one time. I was like, well, why do you call it the chaos fund? She goes, well, when chaos hits, that's where I go. And and that's where you go in case the roof goes or you need to buy a new car or whatever it may be. And instead of going to a credit card, you go to the emergency fund. And then the fifth part is let's pay all that bad debt off, like bad, high interest rate credit cards, those types of things. If you notice, out of those 5 things, what I didn't talk about are rates of return. And
Mm.
that's what a lot of people want to talk about first. I'm like, no, we got to get things organized first. We have to get this foundation built to our house before we start putting the walls up, and before we start putting the second floor and the roof on. Because if the foundation's not sound, the house is going to collapse. So those are kind of the 5 things that I start with anybody that I'm working to. It's like, okay, let's review these things, because that puts them on a great path to not only be able to grow wealth, but insulate it when life does throw that curveball.
That's wow. And I absolutely love that because the putting the roof on before you've done the foundation, right? It doesn't work, right? So I
Yeah,
love that analogy too. I've heard that before. So you gotta have the foundation and then you do the wall. So having
yeah,
it done, but having it done in order,
yeah.
really,
And even
really
if you think
depends.
about it from a gaming perspective, if you're work playing on level 2 and all of a sudden you speed warp to level 25, you probably get annihilated pretty quick because you weren't prepared for it. You have to go through those progressions to get you to where you need to be.
Exactly. I've played not lately, but I've played, when I played like World of Warcraft, yeah, big MMO, like so gosh, more than a decade. That's man, that game's been around. So I remember like within the first few years of playing, like the first like expansion or two, and people would ask, because you could pay for the level skip, right? Be like, oh,
Got it.
like I'm, like at the time, I guess, the first yeah, and people will correct me in the comments, I'm sure. But I want to say, like with Burning Crusade, I think it was like level 60. I think was the max level at the time. You could pay to just go straight to 60. And now you could do the in-game content. And I remember hearing people complain because they were like, okay, well, I paid for it. Now I can do the in-game stuff, but I don't know what I'm doing. I wish there was a tutorial. To which I replied every time when I talk to these people, I'm like, that's what level 1 to 59 was for.
Right. That's
Like,
your tutorial.
that's your tutorials. Like you're learning the game and things are easier as you're in those early levels because it's teaching you how to play the game. And
Yeah.
so when you do that, when you jump straight to 60 or you jump straight to like whatever max level in your game and you don't know how to play, big surprise, it's because you skipped the tutorial part.
Yep.
Right. So like
Yeah.
I mean, we know this like back in the old, like I got my Mario shirt on, right? Like we got the
Yeah.
level skips back in the old Mario.
Yep.
If your friend told you about the warp whistle or the warp zone, pipes, and you use those before you started playing, and you're like, oh, that's cool, and you'd immediately do that, you would get crushed,
Get
and you
crushed.
did
Yeah.
because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Everybody's going faster than me and I can't keep up with them.
Yeah, it's like I can't keep up. It's like no, you gotta go through the levels because that's
Yeah.
how you learn.
Yeah, it's a great analogy because it really you have to experience some of these things, but also part of my job is as best as I possibly can keep people out of falling into the pitfalls that other people are going to fall into. And whether that pitfall might be taking on too much debt, taking on bad debt, making a poor financial decision, buying too much house they can't afford, like those types of things. you know I don't want them to go through and feel that pain. I want to say, okay, well, let's do the analysis on some of the financial decisions that you're going to make. I work with a lot of physicians, and a lot of times they'll come to me and say, I've got this different investment that I want to work in. I'm like, okay, well, let's break that down. What would happen if this goes great? What happened if this investment goes completely off the rails? How are you going to feel about that? And listening and understanding how someone is going to come out on the other end of that scenario is really important to how they're going to either make the decision to go for it or then maybe not decide to go for it.
That's yep. And I like to call that shiny object syndrome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People like, what's the
Oh
cool
God.
new thing
Yep.
that's happening? Is that cool? Can I do that? And so, I guess so. Does that come up a lot? I guess with financial
Oh
planning,
God.
does it?
When we think about it, it used to be the brand, the shiny object. We used to, it was hedge funds, or it was private equity, or now crypto. And there's always that new
Right.
shiny object that people are chasing, right? Thinking that if I invest here, I'm going to be a millionaire overnight. And it's just listen. Everyone could hope that they rewound the clocks and invested in Netflix and Apple and Meta, right? But
Right.
and those stories do exist, but for most people it's having a consistent plan that they're able to be saving a consistent amount and avoiding pitfalls is going to help them not only grow wealth but avoid that hurricane when it comes to those other people. I mean, sometimes people are going to say, yeah, I'm going to put all my money into one specific stock. Well, if that stock has, think about it. I mean, Apple's a great stock, but one bad software upgrade and the stock could go down. Okay. One,
Yeah.
if they're shifting their supply chain from different countries, the stock could go down. And it's not picking on Apple, whether I'm saying buy it or, don't buy it. That's irrelevant. Just using it as an example, like, that you're not diversifying your risk where when you invest in one stock versus when you have something like a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, or, you have a lot more diversification there to smooth out the volatile times.
Right. And smoothing out the volatility is huge because I know that when you look at a certain time horizon, it's always hilarious that I've seen people do this where it's like, oh, if you invested in Apple, I think it was in like 2007, maybe 2008 or early 2008, and it's like, oh, and then the iPhone hit, and then
Mm-hmm.
bam, their stock jumped up and be like, oh yeah, they had like 3,000% increase or something
Mm-hmm.
within like a year span or something like that. It's like, imagine if you invested. It's like, yeah, and then it went back down not too long after that, just to kind of like it kind of leveled out. So you're like, all right, you made a lot of money, you lost a lot of money. It's
Yep.
like okay, so like you had to buy it at a very specific date and sell it at a very specific date, and so like we talked about, if you could go back, if you could reset and reload, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
but
Well,
but you don't know
sometimes
when
it's
those are coming.
exactly. And we always say financial planning would be really easy if we knew the day we were going to die, because then you would just have to build enough money to last us that long. But for every story of that one stock that went through the roof, there's dozens of stories where they put the stock went through the floor down the drain day one. I like to tell people, like, if you think about a baseball analogy, the home run hitters also strike out a lot.
Hmm.
I'd rather, if we put a financial plan together and we're hitting a lot of singles and a lot of doubles and maybe an occasional triple and maybe home run here and there, we're going to do really, really well. And also do really, really well in terms of execution of the plan. But your stomach is going to do better because you're not going to be digesting the volatile times and ups and downs and ups and downs. Like, oh my God, I got to take my statement and put it in the shredder because I don't want to look at it when I had a bad month. Let's hit some singles, let's hit some doubles, let's get a triple every now and again, let's get a home run every now and again, and we're going to be doing really, really well.
That's and yeah, that analogy. And those that listen know I'm not a sports guy, but like if I remember numbers correctly, I think in baseball, like the a batting average, like great, amazing batting average is like 25 to 30% or something. Like
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the base, if you're in the major leagues and you hit once at every three times, you're a Hall of Famer.
yeah, so yeah, which means that the Hall of Famers fail
Tons.
66 to 70% of the time,
Yeah,
right? They
it's
strike
amazing.
out. So it's amazing to think about and be like, oh yeah, and those are the best people. They
Yep.
fail 70% of the time. And you're like,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's just amazing those kind of contexts that we put it in. Because,
Mm-hmm.
and I think gaming a lot like that, it's like, all right, well, you can fail over and over and over and over again in a game. But
Yep.
then once you beat the level, then it's like, all right, well, I beat it. Like you don't, when people ask, it's like, okay, have you beat this? Have you played this game? Have you beat this game? It's like, yeah, I beat that. I beat that. I beat that. Nobody asks like, or well, how many times did you die on level 3? It's like, no,
Right.
nobody cares.
Right.
It's did
Exactly
you
right.
complete it?
Yep. Yep. And I think that's a lot of times people say, when they're looking at staring a really nice whether it's retirement or staring their financial goal that they're able to achieve, you know, they're remembering that hey, there were probably some tough times getting there, but being able to achieve it is it's immeasurable. It's immeasurable. It really is, because there isn't anyone that I've ever met that doesn't have something that they'd really love to do that is going to cost money. I mean, hopes and dreams in people's lives is something that's associated with money. And how much assets do you have, and are you going to be able to do those things that you want to do? And I love being able to help people accomplish those things and say all the things I wanted to do, I was able to do because they had the plan in place, because they were able to deal with life's curveballs as they came across the plate. Those types of things, it really makes the difference.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much for that, Eric.
Yeah.
As we start to wind down this particular episode, I just want to make sure and being able to help everybody, because I definitely want to help the gamers listening too, to make sure that they are, can realize their potential in every way possible. So financially is huge. And so is there anything, before we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't talked about, right, with financial plan? Is there anything that's like, oh, don't forget X?
I think one of the things that I don't particularly care for in my own industry, and I get, and people ask me this a lot, and it's not their fault, it's my industry's fault, is people say, well, Eric, what's your minimum to work with me? And what that implies is that someone has to give me a certain amount of money to invest before I will even work with them at all. And I don't, Daniel, I don't like that type of philosophy for a lot of different reasons. The main one is that it reduces everyone to a dollar sign. And I'm talking to human beings, man. I'm not talking to dollar signs. And obviously, if someone has a certain amount of assets, there's things we're going to be able to do versus people that don't have anything. But if someone is coming to me and asking for my help, I'm going to try to give it to them. So that's one of the things, that if someone is out there and they're looking for help, and someone's saying, well, you know what, you don't meet my minimum to work with you, I think that's probably maybe not the person you wanted to work with anyone, even if you did meet their minimum. Even if you did meet their minimum, you want to find someone that's going to be genuinely interested in getting you from that point to your financial summit. And if that's because you have a lot of assets or not a lot of assets, it shouldn't dictate whether or not you work with someone or not. So that's what I think. If people are looking out there looking for someone, and they hear, well, this is my minimum to work with me, I don't know. To me, that's not the best, maybe not the best person to work with.
I like that. Yeah, it's you're putting a dollar figure to a person, and it's really not what you're looking at. Like that's not the goal, right? Like the
Right.
goal is to have these experiences, to have these memories, to be able to build a success for yourself. So just putting it down to the one little metric that it just kind of almost dehumanizes people. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see
totally.
that. Well, that's fantastic that you're working with everybody like that, Eric. And I guess the question that I have for you is, where can people find out more about you, and maybe people do want to work with you?
Yeah, best way to go, hit my website up. It's going to be emangold. So it's my first letter and last name, emangold.com. There's ebooks on the website, free ebooks that people can download, a retirement guide and the estate planning guide. Some really good free resources. Of course, there's no obligation, but the website's my best place to find me.
Okay. Perfect. So emangold.com. And we'll have the link for you guys in the description, so you can click on that and check out Eric there if you want to work with him, and start doing some financial planning to actually get where you want to go, get to that financial summit that you're talking about. I love
Yeah.
that. All right. And so before we go, Eric, I just have one final question for you.
Yeah.
What is your favorite video game?
Gauntlet. Gauntlet. Easy
Gauntlet.
to go. I know I'm dating myself, but I was always the elf in Gauntlet. I like the speed. And then I was there was always, I like the fact that Gauntlet was, you had your 4-player team, and everybody had their own powers and attributes.
Yep.
Thor was the powerful guy, but he was super slow. Um, Valkyrie was kind of like your mid-tier person, had a little bit of everything. Your wizard was super slow, but he had his spell power. But I liked Elf because he was speedy. He could get away from most things. So
Nice. I love
yeah,
it. Oh, I love playing I played Gauntlet Legends, which I guess was like a follow-on at some point.
Yeah.
But so absolutely, yeah, very fun co-op little adventure
Yep.
game. So super
Yep.
cool. Well, gosh, well, thank you so much for being here, Eric. This has been fantastic. And guys, definitely check out the link below for emangold.com. And if you want to, look into financial planning for yourself. So,
Thank you,
guys,
Daniel.
all right. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.